Hello reader friends, hello book besties, welcome back to the channel. It is your girl Erica, aka Paperbackgirly, and today we are going to be doing the mid-year freakout tag. Along with the mid-year freakout tag, I would love to share with you guys my quarter 2 reading stats. I did do a quarter 1 reading stats video if you want to check out the first 3 months of the year and the reading stats for that. The second quarter of the year is officially April, May, and June, so we are currently in the last month of the second quarter of the year and heading into the third quarter. I did insert all of my stats into Storygraph and we'll be going through some of my Storygraph stats, and then I'll also take you through a couple of my bookmark stats. Here are my current Storygraph stats. I will go through them as we are. So my reading goal for 2023 is 100 books, and this is the first year that I've actually set a true reading goal that I'm striving for, and I am crushing it. I'm crushing it. I'm very much surprised by how far ahead I am of my reading goal. According to Storygraph, I'm ahead by 9 books, but according to Goodreads, I believe I'm ahead by 11 books. I'll put that right here. According to Storygraph, I've read 54 books, but I believe I've actually read 55 books. I don't know where the disconnect is, but we will continue on. So as for the moods of the books that I'm typically reading emotional, lighthearted, funny, and adventurous reads. Some of them are tense, hopeful, and mysterious, while not very many of them are dark, sad, and relaxing. So I think that's a very interesting take or interesting view of my reads. I will say that a lot of my reads recently have been all over the place. I've been reading romance, I've been reading fantasy, I've been reading sci-fi, so I'm honestly very proud of myself for the different roads that I've taken via my reads, and I'd like to continue that as the year progresses. As for the pace and the page number of the reads, I typically am reading medium-paced books, which makes sense. I do like books that have a bit of content but are not too straight to the point. I don't want something to be too long and descriptive, but I don't want something to be so underdeveloped that I'm like, why am I reading this? But as for page number, I've read the majority of my books have been between 300 and 500 pages, but I've read a significant amount of books that were over 500 pages, and we'll go over that on my bookmark stat. I haven't been reading much nonfiction this month. I've probably read maybe 1 nonfiction book, and I'm in the middle of my second nonfiction book, which is Atomic Habits. I haven't put that in my books that I'm currently reading, so I need to update that actually. But I've been listening to the audiobook for Atomic Habits, and I've just been doing that for personal development. I haven't been doing that for any sort of reading challenges or because I want to, whatever. I want to read that book just to get some good information. 98% of my books have been fiction books. We'll take a quick peek at the genres. So I'm a big romance reader. If you guys don't know, now you know. Your girl loves some romance, but I am enjoying dabbling in different genres. I've been really enjoying literary fiction. I've been really enjoying humor. I've been really enjoying mystery. I've been having a fun time with mystery, suspense, and thriller books, and I really want to pick more of those up, and definitely think I will as the colder months kind of come. Aside from romance, I have been dabbling a lot in contemporary, young adult, and fantasy. There have been some sports in there, some mystery, literary fiction, erotica, I guess. I don't know which of my books would be considered erotica. Some LGBTQIA, thriller, historical, dystopian, magical realism. So honestly, a lot of different types of genres, which I want some of those to have more books in them. I want to read more books in different genres, so that'll be definitely a goal for the rest of the year. The tags, don't worry about the tags. The format, I've been reading mostly physical copies of books, but I have been doing Kindle and audiobooks this year, so I think that's been helping me just sort of refreshing my reads, refreshing the format through which I consume my reads. And then the most read authors so far have been Abby Glines, Sarah J. Maas, and Krista and Becca Ritchie, which I'm not surprised because those 3 authors have pretty significantly long series or series with more than 2 books in them. But I will be picking up more Liz Tomford. Her new book is coming out in October, I believe, part of the Windy City series, which we'll talk about today in the mid-year tag. And then Tessa Bailey has been slowly creeping up as well. I'm going to be reading a couple of her books this summer, so this will definitely change as the year goes on. As for the number of books and the number of pages, I have read the most books. I believe in the month of January I read 12 books, but for the past 3 months I've been reading a consistent average of 11 books. I'm hoping that I can reach that again this month. I am a bit behind on that, but because I have decided to challenge myself to read 200 pages a day for the rest of the month, I think I'll be able to get a good amount of books read in the rest of the remaining days of the month. And then as for pages read, the most pages I've read in a month has been almost 5,000 pages, and that was in March. Followed closely by May, where I read 4,700 pages. According to my Storygraph stats, my average rating is a 4.02. I haven't had too many 5-star reads this year, but I will be talking about some of my absolute favorites in the mid-year book tag. But before we do so, I do want to take you guys through a couple of my BookMurray stats. So I have been loving using the BookMurray app for tracking my book reading stats. For a second, I was actively recording the time that I spent per book reading, but since then I haven't really been doing it. Sometimes I would just get frustrated with forgetting to track the time, or just like different little small things that I really didn't have control over, and so I just kind of let myself let that habit go. But this is my BookMurray. I am currently reading the Gunko. What I love about this is that it has the book calendar. So I'll go ahead and show you guys from April, May, and June the books that I've read so far. So in April I read 11 books. Here's a peek at that. In May I also read 11 books, and here is a peek at that. And in June, I've only read 2 books so far, but we've already discussed I definitely will probably get to more by the end of the month. So the book statistics is another favorite part of mine in the entire BookMurray app. According to BookMurray, I've read 55 books so far, and I am reading about an average of 9.2 books a month. Because I don't pay for the paid version of the BookMurray app, there are ads, so I am just watching an ad really quick so that I can see my stats. So I'm reading an average of 400 pages per book. The most pages that I read was 700 pages, and that belongs to A Court of Wings and Ruin. And the least amount of pages that I've read belongs to Evidence of the Affair by Taylor Jenkins Reid. But the top 5 longest books that I've read this year have been A Court of Wings and Ruin, A Court of Mist and Fury, A Love Letter to Whiskey, Mile High, and The Evolution of Mara Dyer. Now that we've gone through the Q2 reading stats, I now would love to share with you guys my answers to the mid-year book tag. Around this time last year is whenever I really started getting into BookTube and really started to see people sharing their thoughts around books. Even though Book Talk and BookTube have been around for at least a couple years now, maybe 5 or more, I personally just was not getting into it until around this time last year. So I saw my favorite creators like Sarah Caroli or Destiny Sidwell posting their mid-year Freakout tags, and so now that it's my turn to finally share my thoughts and opinions on it, I'm actually really excited to do so. As we've already discussed, I've read 55 books this year. I did have a couple of good books to choose from, so some of these might have multiple books for the questions, but I tried my best not to repeat books for different questions. The first one had me stumped. I did have to choose more than one book for this first question, and the first question is, what is the best book that you've read this year? I indeed chose 3 books for this question because I just have different connections to each of these 3 books. So the most recent book that was the best book that I've read had to have been Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. I read this just last month because I was really excited to get to Yours Truly, but I fell in love with this book so much. Like, I can't even describe how much I love this book. This book talks about some of my favorite things in life, some of my favorite Disney characters, some of my favorite fairy tale tropes, and it's just a magical, fun book that I think everyone needs to read. I totally get the hype around this book and around Abby Jimenez. She might be one of my new favorite authors, which I think is a question in this book tag, but I did not choose Abby Jimenez for that question. However, I was just very surprised by how much I loved this book. It follows 2 people that seem like they come from 2 completely contrasting worlds, but really have a lot of similarities in their lives and their responsibilities, and they just have to figure out how to make their lives work for one another and together. Because they come from such differing and contrasting backgrounds, I feel like the conflicts and the things that these characters faced seemed very realistic. It seemed like I really thought that these 2 characters were actually real people that I would see walking down the street in real life telling their life story. I don't know. But this book is just so magical. I can't describe it anything else other than magical, because it's just like, it's like a fairy tale that's come to life. It's like a modern day fairy tale that's come to life, and I absolutely loved it. I did have 2 other books that I just have been in the back of my mind since I read them this year, and I will start from the beginning, which I read this book in January. I meant to read it in February, but A Love Letter to Whiskey by Candy Steiner absolutely stole my soul. It stole my soul. This book is so poetic, it is beautiful, it is lyrical. It is probably one of the best books I have read in my entire life, and I know that is such a intense claim to make, but this book just blew me away. This is about a girl named B and her best friend's boyfriend named Jamie, and there's like forbidden love, there's right person, wrong time, wrong person, right time. There is so, like, this just tugs at the heartstrings. This is actually a 2-part book, so I have the special collector's edition, which features the second book, I guess, it's not really a series, it was really supposed to be just one book, A Love Letter to Whiskey, but the author Candy Steiner decided to make like a sequel, I guess, which is Jamie's reply to B. So basically B writes this beautiful poetic book, this letter to Whiskey, and Whiskey is who she personifies as Jamie. The angst though, the angst in the book is just like, you want these two so badly to be together, and they want to be together so badly, but for some reason things just never work out for them, and it's just like this constant tug and pull at the heartstrings, and it is just such an emotionally riveting book. I want to give this a reread. I think I'm going to give this a reread this summer, because I just need to relive this again, and I just need people to relive this with me. So please go read this book if you haven't already. I believe it still might be on Kindle Unlimited. It is a bigger book because it is a 2-part book. So the second book is called Love Whiskey. It is just gorgeous. And then I had to include this one. Kiss the Sky by Kristen Becker Ritchie literally changed the game for me in the Addicted Calloway Sisters series. Everyone's obsessed with the Addicted Calloway Sisters series. You probably have heard it so many different times on so many different channels from so many different people. Whether or not you've read it, I'm sure you've heard about it. I completely understand the hype around the Addicted Calloway Sisters series. It is such an enthralling read. For some dang reason, Kiss the Sky absolutely did it for me. Connor and Rose's relationship is the epitome of the perfect relationship to me. A strong woman who struggles with her own emotions and struggles with her own anxiety and stresses, and a strong, confident man who is very ambitious, and how these two come together and nurture each other in the most enigmatic love. Like, we only got bits and pieces from the Addicted series of Rose and Connor. He would speak to her in French. We would have no idea what he was saying to her. They would have like little conversations in their heads, or like, you know, just like little moments that we would never truly understand, and we finally understand them in Kiss the Sky. And I feel like because it was so elusive, and because it was so, like, I guess enigmatic is the best way. It was like so mysterious and so kind of kept under wraps. It's like only for them. And I feel like in this book, we are finally privy to their relationship. And there's a lot of stuff that happens in this book. I believe in this book they start like this whole reality TV show, and they get exploited in a lot of different ways, and it's very sad, and it's like very controversial, which I think is why these are such impactful books. But I genuinely fell in love with Rose and Connor, and they are by far my favorite book couple in this series. I thought it was going to be Daisy and Reich because I did love their connection, but after reading Hot House Flower, I'm not sure if another book can top this for me. So these 3 books are the best books that I've read so far this year, and they're very differing and contrasting in the types of stories that they are, but they are all phenomenal. The next question of the book tag is, what was the best sequel that you've read this year? This came out just last week on the 6th of June. This is Unfortunately Yours by Tessa Bailey. I had the amazing privilege to go and see her in person at the Mysterious Galaxy bookstore in San Diego. It was her first author signing event in California, and I feel honored to have been there. It was so fun. There were so many people there. She is such a cool person, and I feel like being able to see her in person and hear her voice, hear her opinion, hear her thoughts about the book and like why she chooses different pathways, I guess, or like different ways to attack tropes and whatnot, like just hearing her talk about her passion, which is writing, allowed me to really just be more open-minded towards her writing. This is the second in a Vine Mess series, which is 2 books. So Secretly Yours, which follows Julian, and then Unfortunately Yours, which follows Natalie. This is an enemies to lovers type situation, marriage of convenience. There's a ton of amazing banter in this book. These 2 characters are just, I think they're soulmates. I genuinely think they're soulmates. Like, they are meant for each other. They provide each other with the perfect amount of wit, but also love and nurturing and care. And these 2 people just kind of grow to be better individually by the end of the story. I didn't really like a trope in this book where he's kind of like keeping a secret from Natalie, but then Natalie's also kind of keeping a secret from August. So it's a little bit weird, but I did rate this a 4.5 stars. I finished this in 3 days, and I was actually really surprised by how much I liked this, because I liked this way more than the first book. And I'm not sure if it was because like we already get a like little tiny crumbs of August and Natalie's relationship in the first book, but I just felt connected to these characters from the first chapter. And I will talk more about this, and I have talked about this a lot in my 24-hour reading vlog, which will be coming out after this video. And so I'm very excited for you guys to hear my thoughts about this, and for you guys to pick this book up too, because it's actually really, really good. I would definitely recommend reading Secretly Yours first though. Next question is a new release that you would like to read but you haven't yet, and that is Abby Jimenez's Yours Truly. I just talked about how I did have to read Part of Your World to get to this one, and I'm so happy I did. But Part of Your World left me so excited to read Yours Truly, because we've already met Brianna, who is the main girl character in this book, in Part of Your World. And I just think that the atmosphere and the vibes that Abby Jimenez's writing was giving me, I think we're going to get that again in Yours Truly. I've heard great things about this book from Rachel Catherine and a couple different other booktubers here on the internet, and so I'm excited to see what my personal opinion of it is. And I've been really enjoying Abby Jimenez's writing, and so I have no other reason not to dabble in this book. And so this will definitely be a book that I pick up very, 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 very soon. The next question is the most anticipated release for the next half of the year. I don't obviously have it because it is not out yet, but Caught Up by Liz Tom Ford is a book that is going to be coming out in October, I believe the end of October, and it'll be the 3rd in the Windy City series, which I absolutely love. The Windy City series is Mile High and The Right Move so far. 2 of my favorite books of all time. I don't know why I didn't put them in the first question, but I think it's because I put them for another question. I literally rave about these books, like literally rave about them. Like the books that I talked about first, and Mile High and The Right Move, have been probably my only 5-star reads all year. So don't take that with a grain of salt, like take it face value. These books are absolutely amazing, and I'm so excited for Caught Up. Ooh, the next question is, what was your biggest disappointment this year? And without question, it's Tell Me Lies by Carola Levering. I despised this book. I have so much contempt for this book, it's actually kind of sad. I was actually really excited for this book too. I think I read this in the end of February, beginning of March. I was actually really excited to read this book. I was seeing it all over the place at Barnes. I was hearing it talked about. The TV series was being talked about on Hulu. I wanted to read it before I got to the TV series. It sounded like really interesting. Not for me. Not for me. I absolutely hated the main character. Didn't like Steven, who's the main guy character. He's very manipulative and just gross. He was a sleaze. I did not like him at all. Just like I don't even want to answer this question. Like I feel so bad just like spewing all this negative energy about this book because it's making me feel bad. I don't want to feel this way. I'm actually really happy to be filming this video right now. But what's actually so funny is I didn't mind the Hulu TV series. The Hulu TV series was actually pretty decent. I feel like it went about things way differently than what happens in the book. in a way. The book has some pretty traumatic plot twists, I want to say, and the movie or the TV show tackles things in a little bit differently of a way, maybe more of a politically correct way. I don't know if they, you know, had some adjustments for particular reasons, but this book just wasn't for me. I gave it a 2 out of 5 stars, and it was by far my biggest disappointment of the year so far. Contrastly, though, on the other side of the spectrum, the next question is, what was your biggest surprise of the year so far? And this one's actually a new release, and that is Happy Place by Emily Henry. I was very surprised by how much I liked this book because I haven't really enjoyed Emily Henry's books recently. I tried reading Beach Read a few years ago, wasn't really my favorite, couldn't really get into it. I still need to reread it and actually read it. I wasn't a big fan of Book Lovers, not maybe what I was expecting, but this one I didn't really go into it with any expectations at all, especially because it's a new release. People didn't really have the chance to like get their own opinions out there yet. Loved the summer vibes in this book. This book is definitely giving more like literary fiction vibes. But I loved the emphasis on the relationship. I felt like the two characters that were in the conflicted relationship in this book, like they had so much chemistry, and I genuinely was asking myself, like, you guys seem perfect together. Like, why are you guys butting heads? Why are you guys not together? And so whenever I finally figured out what was happening and what happened between the two characters for them to have their little breakup or, you know, situation, I was very frustrated because I'm like, you guys are so good together. If you guys just communicated, if you guys just talked, like this would have never happened. You guys would have been fine. But I mean, I get it. Maybe I understand it. Maybe this does happen in real life. It's somewhat realistic, I guess, in that sense. But I feel like it was just a little bit maybe childish or immature, emotionally immature, the way that they went about things. But there's a lot of found family, I guess, or sense of family in this book. The friend group has a sense of found family in it. They kind of come from all differing home lives in terms of like their relationship with their family and their friends, or their family and their parents. How they deal with things is all a little bit differently. And so that comes into light a lot. Concept of people growing apart after college comes up to the front a lot. There's just a lot of things that this book talks about and goes through that I thought was very beautiful, that I really liked, and I rated this a 4.5 stars. It was almost a 5 stars for me, but it just didn't give that 5-star feeling at some points, and so I was actually really surprised that I actually gave it such a high rating. I think everyone should read this book. It's a really, really, really good book. And that's coming from someone who's not like an Emily Henry stan. Like, I'm not auto-buying her books. I'm not, you know, bowing down to her shrine. I'm not doing anything crazy. Like, I'm not a huge Emily Henry fan, but that book, that's a great book. So the next question is, what is your new favorite author? Whether that's a new debut author or an author that's new to you. And for this one, I chose 2 different authors because I just wasn't sure which way I wanted to go. The first one being Liz Tomford. I just talked about the Windy City series and how excited I am for Caught Up to come out. Liz Tomford is probably one of my favorite authors of all time right now. I absolutely ate up both these books. They are longer books too, and I just feel like even though they were longer books, I wanted more, especially with Mile High. I have a whole Mile High reading blog on my channel. If you check out my reading, what was it called? My Daylight Savings reading blog. I'll link it up in the cards if I can. I read the entire Mile High book in that blog, and it was unanticipated. I was not expecting to do so, but absolutely fell in love with that book. I could not put it down. And same thing with The Right Move. I think after reading Mile High, I was on that high. I was on that Mile High after reading it, and it took me a second to sort of find myself in the same boat with The Right Move. But after I read it and after I found myself connected to the characters, I was like, okay, yeah, it's not just the book, it's the author. It's not just the tropes, it's the author writing the tropes. So I'm super stoked for Caught Up to come out in October. But the second author that I thought about instantly was K.A. Tucker, because I read The Simple Wild in, I want to say last month? April? No, last month. And I absolutely loved it. I thought that her writing was so refreshing. The way that she has like this gradual, slow, angsty build to her writing, especially whenever it comes to the romance, so good. So good. This was probably like one of the best slow burn romances that I've ever read, because I feel like I wasn't waiting for anything. Like, she gave us the crumbs that we needed, and the enemies banter, like the enemies to friends to lovers banter in this book, was so good. But I feel like I haven't read enough of her writing to say that like she's my new favorite author, which is why I chose Liz Tomford first. But this has multiple books in this series, and I think this author also writes like differing genres as well. So I will definitely be dabbling more in her writing. So the next question had me thinking for a second because honestly, My Boyfriend was written by a woman. Okay, if I'm being honest, I'm comparing every single book boyfriend to my book boyfriend to My Boyfriend because he's literally just like everything I could ever ask for in a man. And so, I mean, it's hard for me to find a new fictional crush, which is the answer to the question. Who is your newest fictional crush? But I did figure out, maybe I should answer this question. Maybe I should figure out who would be my fictional favorite crushes. I immediately thought of Connor Cobalt because I think he reminds me of my own boyfriend sometimes. And just like how, I don't know, he's a Capricorn male. If that tells you anything, he's a Capricorn male. So, Connor Cobalt reminds me a lot of my own boyfriend, and I found myself crushing on the way that he treated Rose. And I would also say maybe Noah Riley from Say You Swear. I thought he was a very good book boyfriend. Also, Noah Shaw has always been one of my favorite book boyfriends of all time. So I don't know, but that's my answer. Next is my newest favorite character from a book, and this one's actually a fictional character. Well, I mean, they're all fictional characters, but like he's extra fictional because he's a high fantasy character, and that is Thimble from Legends and Lattes. This little mouse right here actually was probably the most memorable character from this book. I mean, they're all pretty memorable, but Thimble was definitely my favorite character, and that was the first character that I thought of whenever this question popped up. He is a baking mouse, and he doesn't really speak much. He doesn't really talk much, but he's very creative, and he like pays attention to the world around him, so he's very adaptive, and he was just a really great character, and I absolutely fell in love with him. And I would love to try some of his desserts. I would. What I wouldn't give to try a thimblet or a cinnamon roll. This next question was a little bit hard because I think I got a little stone for a heart or something because I don't really cry much at books. The next question is a book that made you cry, and I haven't cried at any of the books that I've read, to be honest. There were some books that have tugged at the heartstrings, but I don't remember shedding any tears. I don't think. I remember my eyes got watery for Addicted to You, and this is the first in the Addicted Calloway Sisters series books. I think it's just because I was finally getting connected to the characters, and what happens at the end of the book is intense. You find out so much about the characters by the end of the book, and it really sets the tone for the rest of the story and the storyline. And then The Song of Achilles was actually another book that really tugged at the heartstrings, and I found myself like making sad faces, but I didn't cry. Even though this is like supposed to be like a really sad book and one of the saddest books of all time, like it definitely tugged at the heartstrings, and I was really sad, but no tears were shed. I had to think about the answers to this question as well. So the next question is, what book made you happy? And I chose two books. First, I will say, for the sake of not repeating a book, Flawless by Elsie Silver. The reason why this book made me so happy was because it got me out of a reading slump. I read this after I read Tell Me Lies, and it literally pulled me by the collar out of the depths of my reading slump and inspired me to continue to read the Chestnut Springs series. This series is such a phenomenal series and deserves all the hype that it gets. I am currently on the third book in the series, I think. Powerless, and Reckless, the fourth book in the series, just recently came out. So if you haven't already, totally dabble in this series because it's really good. And I think that this series, like I said, deserves all the hype that it gets. But another book that made me really happy was Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. Like I said earlier, whenever I talked about it, this book talks about some of my absolute favorite things in life and talks about my favorite Disney and fairy tale movies and books. It references my absolute #1 favorite movie of all time, of literally all time, which is The Princess Bride. And the last line of the last chapter in this book is "As you wish," which is literally so significant to The Princess Bride. If you know, you know. And so this just made me so happy in so many different ways. I'm also like a huge Disney girl. Like I was a huge Disney fan growing up. I'm not like a Disney adult now, which I mean I wouldn't mind being anyway. No shame or hate against Disney adults, but I was super obsessed with Disney growing up, and so just like it connected to that like little girl in me that loves Cinderella and loves The Little Mermaid and loves fairy tales and princesses, and like I feel like Alexis and Daniel were like a prince and a princess. So yeah, these two books made me so happy. Honestly, reading books in general just makes me happy, but you know. The next question I guess could be interpreted in a couple different ways. The next question is, what is the most beautiful book you have acquired this year? And I didn't know if it meant like physically, like a physical beautiful book, like with a beautiful cover, or if it meant like the contents of the book are beautiful. So if it was referring to a book that was like physically beautiful, I have a couple different choices. So The Summer of Broken Rules, I mean, gorgeous cover. Magnolia Parks and Daisy Hates, some of the most eclectic covers I've ever seen. Gorgeous. And then the 10,000 Doors of January. This book is beautiful. And also the inside of the book is also really beautiful. Actually, this is a book that has stuck with me more than I thought it would after I read it, and so it was actually a really profound story. But if it were talking about like the beauty of the contents of the book or like a story, I would without a doubt say A Love Letter to Whiskey. Without a doubt, without any question, the most beautiful, poetic, lyrical, gorgeous, eloquent story I've ever read. Please go read it. The next question is, what are some books, or what is a book that you need to read before the end of the year? And I have a couple of them for sure. I have been wanting to get my hands on Along with You in the Ether and The Atlas Paradox. Oh, and Tomorrow. Okay, all three of these books I think are currently in the States on hardcover only. And so I did purchase these. I mean, look how much bigger they are. That's why I don't know if this was a good purchase, but they are so much bigger than the American books, the US books. Like, they're just freaking long and huge. And I would really like to get to these before the end of the year. Especially, I mean, not even especially, all of them. Tomorrow has been on my radar forever. And look at this gorgeous holographic cover. I absolutely love that. Alone with You in the Ether has been in so many of my book shopping vlogs and book shopping videos because every time I see it, I want to buy it. I want to know what it's about, and I finally have it, so I have no choice not to read it. And then The Atlas Paradox. I actually really liked The Atlas 6, and I read that at the end of last year. I think I'm more so saving this for like fall time, those dark academia vibes, September-y time. I think I might take this with me to Europe. I'm going to Europe later on this year, so I think this would be a good book to have with me in Europe. So yeah, those are those. And then I also really like to finish the Finley Donovan series. I read Finley Donovan is Killing It in February. Actually really liked it. Finally understood the hype about it, and I really did want to get to the next two books. I just recently picked this one up during my San Diego County book crawl, and whenever I bought it, the bookseller actually told me that this one gets even wackier and crazier than the first two, and so it made me excited to like want to continue on in the series. And then the last question of the entire book tag: what has been your favorite book to movie adaptation? Just recently I watched A Man Called Otto, which is the Americanized version of A Man Called Ove, which I read in March. No, I read this in April for my Aries book pick video, Aries recommendation book pick video. And this was actually a pleasant surprise for me. This is another book that sort of tugged at the heartstrings, had me like sad but not shedding any tears. A Man Called Otto is the US version of A Man Called Ove. So this is written by Fredrik Backman, who is Swedish. And so there is a lot of Swedish like influence, and it was meant for like that audience. I love the differences and the changes that they made to A Man Called Otto, because it definitely made it like more relatable as an American. In this book, I believe Parvana, who is the woman, it's hard to explain. This follows an old man. His name is Ove, and he's lost his wife, who was really like his rock. And so since he's lost his wife, he sort of lost his purpose, and so he kind of wants to go be with his wife. And so that's the trigger warning. The main trigger warning in this book is that it does deal with suicidal attempts, but unfortunately there is constantly something that's happening that is sort of interrupting those times and those moments when he's ready to go, when he's ready to commit the act himself, and he'll get interrupted by a cat, or he'll get interrupted by his neighbor. And in the book, the neighbor's name is Parvana, and I believe the family is like Middle Eastern or something of the sort, and or maybe even Indian, East Asian. I don't know, they're just, you're not typically white or typically Swedish. And so in A Man Called Otto, the woman is Hispanic, and I forget her name. She's like Salvadorian and Mexican at the same time, like from El Salvador, but like her parents moved to Mexico. I don't know, but I feel like that's such a relatable thing in America. We have so many different people from different countries deciding to live a new life or a different life than what they're culturally used to. And I feel like Ove being like the strict white male that he is, and like just like having that worldview, and then having these other different worldviews coming around him, and for lack of a better term, educating him empirically. It was just such a beautiful story, and I feel like I grew as a person in the book and again in the movie. I feel like Tom Hanks did an amazing job playing Otto, and I feel like the kids in the movie were great. The family in the movie was great. I mean, just everything about it. It also tackles transgender issues. I feel like in the book there's someone who's gay, but in the movie that person is then now transgender. So it's just very modernized, very Americanized, and I really liked it a lot. It brought forth a lot of questions and conversation about things that are happening real time in the modern American world today. And so it was just a very phenomenal read and a very phenomenal movie, and so that is the answer to that question. Okay, so here are all the books that we have gone through today in the mid-year freakout tag. Today's video was supposed to be my 24-hour reading vlog, but there's a lot of footage to cut through in that vlog, so I'm happy that I was able to sit down and film this video for you guys today. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I would love to know how your current reading year is going for you. If you'd like, leave a comment down below and I would love to chat it up with you down there. And if you're not subscribed already, please consider doing so. I would love for you to stick around and join me on future videos. Thank you so much for watching this video, guys. I will see you in my next one, which will definitely be my 24-hour reading vlog. Then, sneak peek, hint hint, we will be reading some Gemini book recommendation picks in the video following that. See you then.